Have you ever noticed how the year can start with so much fire, and then quietly turn into the same old pattern just with a new calendar? It's January, and 2026 already feels like it's moving. And if you're like most people, you don't actually need more motivation. You've had motivation. You've had those nights where you swear, "This is it. I'm changing." What you need is something calmer and more reliable than motivation. Something that still works on the day you're tired, the day you're disappointed, the day life does what life always does and refuses to be convenient. So let's treat goals differently this time. Not like wishes, not like a dramatic reinvention, more like an act of engineering mixed with an act of honesty. Because achieving your goals in 2026 isn't mainly about forcing yourself forward. It's about removing the invisible friction that keeps pulling you back. It's about building a way of living where progress becomes the default, not the exception. And the strange part is, the first move isn't start. The first move is to end. Step 1 is to end before you begin. This sounds backward until you feel what it does to your mind. Most people start with a rush of possibilities. They write a list. They feel powerful for a moment, and then the list becomes a quiet source of shame, because the list doesn't care that you're human. The list doesn't care that you have energy cycles, doubts, responsibilities, moods, a body that gets tired, a brain that gets scared. A list is just a list. Ending before you begin is different. It means you decide what done actually looks like, clearly, specifically, and in a way your future self can recognize without debate. Because the enemy of goals is not laziness, it's vagueness. Vague goals create vague days, and vague days are incredibly easy to waste. So imagine it's late December 2026, not in a dreamy way, more like you're standing in your kitchen at night, the house quiet, and you're looking back at the year with the kind of honesty you can only access when no one is watching. What would make you able to say, with a clean conscience, "I kept my word to myself"? Now here's the part most people skip. You don't just define what you want to achieve, you define what you're no longer willing to carry. You define the ending of the old pattern. Because a goal is rarely just something you add, it's usually something you replace. If your goal is to get in shape, the real ending might be the end of negotiating with excuses at 9 p.m. If your goal is to build a business, the real ending might be the end of using research as a hiding place. If your goal is to improve your relationships, the real ending might be the end of avoiding hard conversations and calling it peace. And notice what's happening. The goal stops being a fantasy. It becomes a boundary. It becomes a decision. A practical way to do this is to write one sentence that your future self would accept as proof, not 10 sentences. 1. By December 31st, 2026, I will have, and then something measurable enough that you can't trick yourself. Not perfection, proof. But there's an even more powerful move. Write an anti-ending. Write what you refuse to repeat. By December 31st, 2026, I will no longer be the person who, and fill in the blank with the pattern that keeps stealing your life. That single sentence can become a mirror you carry with you. And mirrors are uncomfortable, but they're honest. Now, when you do this, you'll feel resistance, not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the kind that says, "Don't commit too hard, life might embarrass you." That voice is not your enemy. It's your fear trying to protect you from disappointment. And you don't need to kill that fear, you just need to lead it. So make the ending realistic. Build it around constraints. Decide what you're willing to trade. Every real goal has a cost, and if you don't choose the cost consciously, life will choose it for you, and you usually won't like the price. Ask yourself one clean question: what has to stop for this to be true? Because if nothing has to stop, the goal is probably a wish. If you want a simple, grounded action you can do immediately, do this. Pick one goal you care about and give it an ending that includes a stop. Not just, I will do X, but I will stop Y. I will stop missing workouts because I stayed up scrolling. I will stop saying yes to things that make me resentful. I will stop starting the day in chaos. Make it personal, make it true, and then make an if-then promise that your tired self can follow. If it's a hard day, then I will still do the smallest version of the plan. If I miss once, then I return the next day without punishment. If I feel the urge to quit, then I reread my one-sentence ending and take one step anyway. Somewhere inside that structure, something changes. You stop chasing a version of yourself you admire, and you start protecting the version of yourself you're trying to build. Because when you end before you begin, you're not relying on mood, you're relying on clarity. And clarity has a quiet kind of power. It's the difference between wanting a new life and finally closing the door on the old one. Step 2. Choose a word, not a goal. Have you ever hit a goal and still felt strangely empty afterward? It's a weird moment. You finally get the thing you promised yourself you'd get. You lose the weight, you make the money, you finish the project, you hit the milestone. And for a few hours, maybe a few days, you feel that lift. That, I did it. And then the mind does what the mind always does. It adapts. The feeling fades. A new desire shows up. Or worse, you realize you built a life that can produce achievements, but not peace. That's why goals alone can be a trap. Not because goals are bad. Goals are useful. Goals give direction. But goals can also make you live in a constant state of not yet. Not yet enough. Not yet ready. Not yet proud. And when your identity becomes the person who is trying, you can quietly spend years trying without becoming. So there's a different anchor that works better for a whole year. Something simpler, something you can carry into every day, even when the day goes off the rails. Choose a word, not a slogan to post. Not a cute theme for your planner. A word that becomes a compass. A word that tells you who you are practicing being, especially when no one is watching. Because here's the truth. Most people don't say out loud. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your self-image. And a single word, chosen well, has a quiet way of reshaping that self-image without the pressure and drama of, I must transform. Think of it like this. A goal is a destination, a word is a way of walking, and walking is what you do every day. So how do you choose the right word? You don't choose the word that sounds impressive. You choose the word that corrects your specific imbalance. If you tend to start intensely and disappear, your word might be steady, not exciting, but life-changing. Because steady makes you ask in a small moment of temptation, what would steady do right now? It nudges you toward the boring, powerful choice. Show up again. If you tend to overthink, your word might be simple. Simple meals. Simple systems. Simple next steps. Simple becomes permission to stop complicating your own progress. If you tend to people-please and then resent everyone, your word might be boundaries, not as a weapon, as an act of self-respect. Boundaries is the word that reminds you your time is your life, and you don't get refunds. If you tend to chase approval, your word might be integrity. Integrity is a private word. It doesn't need applause. It asks, would I still do this if nobody knew? That question alone can save you from 1,000 self-betrayals. If you're harsh with yourself, always pushing, always dissatisfied, your word might be gentle, not soft, not lazy. Gentle as in sustainable. Gentle as in, I can keep going without breaking myself. And you can feel it, right? The right word doesn't just sound nice. It hits a nerve. It tells the truth about what's been missing. Now, here's the subtle power of a word. It turns your year into a series of small identity votes. The Stoics had a way of speaking about this without making it dramatic. They were obsessed with the idea that you become your character through repeated choices, tiny choices, ordinary moments. Epictetus basically points at the daily practice. You train your mind the way you train a craft, by doing it again and again until it becomes you. A word is a way to bring that practice into the messiest parts of life, the parts where goals don't help much. Traffic, stress, conflict, boredom, loneliness, temptation. Because goals don't speak to you when you're about to snap at someone you love. But a word can. Goals don't guide you when you're tired at night and about to sabotage tomorrow. But a word can. Goals don't help when you feel behind and ashamed and you want to quit. But a word can. Let me make it very concrete. Imagine your word is steady. You wake up late. The day is already chaotic. Your brain immediately wants to do the usual thing. Either go hard to make up for it, or give up and call the day ruined. But steady doesn't do either. Steady says, what's the smallest honest action that keeps the chain alive? Maybe it's a 10-minute walk. Maybe it's one page. Maybe it's one email you've been avoiding. It's not impressive. It's faithful. And that is how people actually win years. Or imagine your word is boundaries. Someone texts you with a request that you know will drain you. The old you would say yes and then complain internally for 2 days. But boundaries steps in like a calm adult. Boundaries says, I can be kind without abandoning myself. So you answer with respect. You protect your energy. And you don't need to explain your entire soul to justify it. Now pause for a second and ask yourself this, because this is where the whole thing becomes personal. If one word could protect you from your most common self-sabotage in 2026, what would that word be? Not the word you wish were true, the word you need. And once you choose it, don't keep it abstract. Give it a job. Write down 3 real situations where you usually lose yourself. Maybe it's late night scrolling, maybe it's emotional eating, maybe it's procrastination, maybe it's snapping at people, maybe it's saying yes when you mean no. Now connect your word to those situations like a tool. If your word is steady, decide what steady looks like at 9 p.m. If your word is simple, decide what simple looks like on a Monday morning. If your word is integrity, decide what integrity looks like when nobody will catch you. This is the if-then part that turns a word into behavior. If I face my usual trigger, then I will act in alignment with my word in one small way, not 10 ways. 1. The smallest version that still counts as you. And here's the part people underestimate. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to build trust with yourself. A word is a promise you can keep in small pieces, and when you keep it in small pieces, you stop needing big emotional speeches to restart your life. Your word becomes a quiet leader. It also helps you filter opportunities. In 2026, you will be tempted by 1,000 things. Projects, distractions, commitments, shortcuts, drama. A word gives you a simple question. Does this move me toward the person I'm becoming, or away from them? And that question matters, because time is not just hours. Time is attention. Time is identity. What you repeatedly give yourself to, you become. So choose the word. Keep it close. Say it before you open your phone in the morning. Say it when you're about to negotiate. Say it when you're about to quit. Not like a spell, like a reminder of your direction. Because a goal is something you reach once. A word is something you live every day. And when you live it every day, the goals start happening as a side effect, almost quietly, because you're no longer trying to force a new life. You're practicing being the kind of person who naturally creates it. Step 2. Choose a word, not a goal. Have you ever hit a goal and still felt strangely empty afterward? It's a weird moment. You finally get the thing you promised yourself you'd get. You lose the weight, you make the money, you finish the project, you hit the milestone, and for a few hours, maybe a few days, you feel that lift, that "I did it." And then the mind does what the mind always does. It adapts. The feeling fades. A new desire shows up. Or worse, you realize you built a life that can produce achievements but not peace. That's why goals alone can be a trap. Not because goals are bad. Goals are useful. Goals give direction. But goals can also make you live in a constant state of not yet. Not yet enough. Not yet ready. Not yet proud. And when your identity becomes the person who is trying, you can quietly spend years trying without becoming. So there's a different anchor that works better for a whole year. Something simpler. Something you can carry into every day, even when the day goes off the rails. Choose a word, not a slogan to post, not a cute theme for your planner, a word that becomes a compass, a word that tells you who you are practicing being, especially when no one is watching. Because here's the truth, most people don't say out loud. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your self-image. And a single word, chosen well, has a quiet way of reshaping that self-image without the pressure and drama of "I must transform." Think of it like this. A goal is a destination. A word is a way of walking, and walking is what you do every day. So how do you choose the right word? You don't choose the word that sounds impressive. You choose the word that corrects your specific imbalance. If you tend to start intensely and disappear, your word might be steady, not exciting, but life-changing. Because steady makes you ask, in a small moment of temptation, what would steady do right now? It nudges you towards the boring, powerful choice. Show up again. If you tend to overthink, your word might be simple. Simple meals, simple systems, simple next steps. Simple becomes permission to stop complicating your own progress. If you tend to people please and then resent everyone, your word might be boundaries, not as a weapon, as an act of self-respect. Boundaries is the word that reminds you your time is your life and you don't get refunds. If you tend to chase approval, your word might be integrity. Integrity is a private word. It doesn't need applause. It asks, would I still do this if nobody knew? That question alone can save you from 1,000 self-betrayals. If you're harsh with yourself, always pushing, always dissatisfied, your word might be gentle, not soft, not lazy. Gentle as in sustainable. Gentle as in, I can keep going without breaking myself. And you can feel it, right? The right word doesn't just sound nice. It hits a nerve. It tells the truth about what's been missing. Now, here's the subtle power of a word. It turns your year into a series of small identity votes. The Stoics had a way of speaking about this without making it dramatic. They were obsessed with the idea that you become your character through repeated choices, tiny choices, ordinary moments. Epictetus basically points at the daily practice. You train your mind the way you train a craft, by doing it again and again until it becomes you. A word is a way to bring that practice into the messiest parts of life, the parts where goals don't help much. Traffic, stress, conflict, boredom, loneliness, temptation, because goals don't speak to you when you're about to snap at someone you love, but a word can. Goals don't guide you when you're tired at night and about to sabotage tomorrow, but a word can. Goals don't help when you feel behind and ashamed and you want to quit, but a word can. Let me make it very concrete. Imagine your word is steady. You wake up late. The day is already chaotic. Your brain immediately wants to do the usual thing, either go hard to make up for it or give up and call the day ruined. But steady doesn't do either. Steady says, what's the smallest honest action that keeps the chain alive? Maybe it's a 10-minute walk. Maybe it's one page. Maybe it's one email you've been avoiding. It's not impressive. It's faithful. And that is how people actually win years. Or imagine your word is boundaries. Someone texts you with a request that you know will drain you. The old you would say yes and then complain internally for 2 days, but boundaries steps in like a calm adult. Boundaries says, I can be kind without abandoning myself. So you answer with respect. You protect your energy, and you don't need to explain your entire soul to justify it. Now pause for a second and ask yourself this, because this is where the whole thing becomes personal. If one word could protect you from your most common self-sabotage in 2026, what would that word be? Not the word you wish were true, the word you need. And once you choose it, don't keep it abstract. Give it a job. Write down 3 real situations where you usually lose yourself. Maybe it's late night scrolling, maybe it's emotional eating, maybe it's procrastination, maybe it's snapping at people, maybe it's saying yes when you mean no. Now, connect your word to those situations like a tool. If your word is steady, decide what steady looks like at 9 p.m. If your word is simple, decide what simple looks like on a Monday morning. If your word is integrity, decide what integrity looks like when nobody will catch you. This is the if-then part that turns a word into behavior. If I face my usual trigger, then I will act in alignment with my word in one small way, not 10 ways. 1. The smallest version that still counts as you. And here's the part people underestimate. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to build trust with yourself. A word is a promise you can keep in small pieces. And when you keep it in small pieces, you stop needing big emotional speeches to restart your life. Your word becomes a quiet leader. It also helps you filter opportunities. In 2026, you will be tempted by 1,000 things. Projects, distractions, commitments, shortcuts, drama. A word gives you a simple question. Does this move me toward the person I'm becoming or away from them? And that question matters because time is not just hours. Time is attention. Time is identity. What you repeatedly give yourself to, you become. So choose the word. Keep it close. Say it before you open your phone in the morning. Say it when you're about to negotiate. Say it when you're about to quit. Not like a spell, like a reminder of your direction, because a goal is something you reach once. A word is something you live every day, and when you live it every day, the goals start happening as a side effect, almost quietly, because you're no longer trying to force a new life. You're practicing being the kind of person who naturally creates it. And once that clicks, the next question becomes obvious. If your word is your compass, what system will carry you when your feelings refuse to cooperate? Step 3. Create a system, not a wish list. Have you ever written a list of goals that looked amazing on paper, and then somehow your actual days stayed the same? That's one of the quietest forms of disappointment. Not dramatic, not loud. Just that slow realization that the list is real, but your life isn't cooperating. And if you're honest, it's not because you don't care. It's because caring isn't a method. Caring is a feeling, and feelings are weather. A system is different. A system is what still works when the weather changes. Most people treat goals like a wish list. They stack achievements like items in an online cart. Get fit, learn a skill, save money, build a business, read more, meditate, fix my sleep, fix my life. And the brain looks at that list and feels a quick hit of hope. But the next morning, nothing about the environment, the schedule, the default behaviors, or the friction points has changed. So the old day shows up again, and the old day usually wins. A system is not a list of outcomes. It's a set of default actions that happen whether you feel inspired or not. It's the bridge between your intentions and your calendar. And in 2026, if you want a different year, you don't need more ambitious goals. You need a more honest system. The simplest way to understand a system is this: it's what you do on an average day, not your best day, not your New Year's day, your average Tuesday, when you're a little tired, a little busy, and your phone is trying to seduce you into forgetting your priorities. If your plan only works on your best day, it's not a plan, it's a fantasy. So let's build something that actually survives you. Start by choosing one goal you care about and turning it into a daily or weekly minimum. This is the part people resist because their ego wants intensity. Their ego wants the dramatic version: 2-hour workouts, perfect diet, deep work for 5 hours, read a book a week, transform everything now. But intensity is fragile. It depends on mood and energy. And mood and energy are not stable. Consistency is stable if you design for it. So instead of asking, what would the perfect version of this look like, ask a more powerful question: what is the smallest version of this that I can do, even on a bad day? If your goal is fitness, the system might begin with 20 minutes of walking every day, no exceptions. Or 3 strength sessions a week that are short enough to be non-negotiable. Not because that's the final form, but because it's the form that gets done. If your goal is writing or building a project, the system might be 45 minutes a day, phone in another room, same time, same place. Not when I feel like it. A system doesn't wait for permission from your emotions. If your goal is saving money, the system might be automated transfers on payday and a simple rule about one spending category you'll protect, not a complicated budget you abandon after 2 weeks. And notice what's happening. The system is not trying to impress anyone, it's trying to be real. There's also something psychologically important here. Your brain doesn't trust big promises anymore. Not because you're broken, but because you've watched yourself make them and then disappear. And the brain learns from experience. So when you build a system based on small, repeatable actions, you're not just building progress, you're rebuilding self-trust. You're proving to your own mind, I do what I say I'll do. That's character. That's power. The Stoics were obsessed with this idea, not in a motivational way, but in a practical way. They didn't talk about manifesting outcomes. They talked about practicing virtue. Practicing means repetition. It means you show up again, you refine, you adjust. You keep your mind from turning discipline into a temporary personality. You become consistent because you've designed your life to make consistency the easiest option. Now, here's where systems usually fail. People build systems that are too complicated. They create an entire life operating manual, 10 habits, 5 trackers, 3 routines, a morning routine that requires waking up like a monk and living like you have no job. It looks beautiful online. It collapses in real life. A good system is almost boring. It's simple enough to do without thinking. The best systems have fewer moving parts. So let's make it concrete with a framework that works across almost any goal. A trigger, an action, and a reward. The trigger is the cue you attach the habit to. The action is the behavior you want. The reward is a small sense of completion that tells your brain, this matters. If your goal is to read more, the trigger might be making coffee. The action is reading 2 pages while the coffee brews. The reward is closing the book and feeling that quiet win before the day steals your attention. If your goal is to work out, the trigger might be finishing work. The action is changing into workout clothes immediately before you sit down. The reward might be a shower and a simple done moment in your mind. The key is not perfection. The key is automation. You want the habit to feel like brushing your teeth. It happens because it's who you are and how your day is built. Let me ask you something in the middle of all this, because it matters. When you fail your goals, what do you usually blame? Your discipline or your design? Because if you keep blaming discipline, you'll keep trying to fix yourself with shame. But if you start looking at design, you'll notice something liberating. You don't need to become a different person overnight. You need to set up a different default. A system is a default, and a real system also includes what you do when you fall off. This is where most people lose the year. They miss a day, and their mind turns it into a verdict. See, this is why you never change. Then they spiral into the all-or-nothing cycle. If I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all. That's not laziness. That's emotional protection. It's the mind trying to avoid the pain of trying again. So, your system needs a recovery rule, not as an optional idea, as a law. Here's a simple one. Never miss twice. Not because you're a machine, but because missing twice creates a new identity. The person who stopped. Missing once is life. Missing twice is a pattern. So you decide in advance. If I miss one day, then the next day I do the smallest version of the habit, even if it's almost laughably small. Especially then. That small return is how you keep your identity intact. And this is the if-then instruction for step 3, the kind that saves years. If you feel overwhelmed by your goals, then shrink the action until it becomes inevitable, and do it at the same time tomorrow. You don't need a heroic day. You need a repeatable day. Now let's go even deeper, because there's a quiet truth behind systems. Your system is not just what you do, it's what you refuse to debate. Every time you debate a habit, you create exhaustion. You turn a simple action into a daily courtroom drama. But when you decide once, you conserve energy. You protect attention. You stop negotiating with your future. So choose your non-negotiable block for one priority. Put it somewhere in the day that has a realistic chance of happening. If mornings are chaos, don't build a system that requires perfection at 6 a.m. If nights are unstable, don't build a system that depends on willpower at 10 p.m. Put the habit where you're strongest. Systems are honest about human nature, and then you protect the system with one boundary. 1. Maybe the boundary is no phone until the habit is done. Maybe it's workout clothes ready the night before. Maybe it's subscriptions cancelled, so scrolling isn't the default. The boundary is the guardrail that keeps the system from being bullied by your old patterns. And what you'll find is this: once the system exists, the goal stops feeling like a distant mountain. It becomes a path under your feet. That's when progress starts to feel calmer, less emotional, more inevitable. And the next step is almost a natural continuation of this idea, because once your system is built, you start noticing something else. The space you live in, the screens you touch, the people around you. They are either feeding your system or starving it. And that takes us directly into step 4. Step 4. Upgrade your environment. Q. Have you ever had a day where you swore you were going to be disciplined? And then one small thing ruined it. One notification, one snack sitting on the counter, one quick scroll that turned into 40 minutes. That's not because you're weak. That's because your environment is stronger than your intentions. And this is one of the most freeing truths you can accept in 2026. You don't need superhuman willpower. You need fewer battles. You need a life where the right choice is the easy choice more often than the wrong one. The environment is the invisible hand that steers you when your mind is tired. It's the silent architect of your habits. Most people try to change themselves without changing the room they live in, without changing the phone they hold, the couch they sink into, the people they constantly absorb. They keep the same triggers and then act surprised when the same cravings show up. But behavior is often just the simplest response to what's nearby. So when you upgrade your environment, you're not doing something superficial. You're doing something deeply practical. You're making your future self more likely to win. Think about it like gravity. Your environment is gravity. It pulls you towards certain behaviors without asking for permission. And if you don't design that gravity, you'll be living inside someone else's design. Apps, algorithms, convenience culture, old routines, and whatever chaos your day throws at you. So let's make it actionable, but also real. Start with a simple principle. Reduce friction for what you want, increase friction for what you don't want. If you want to read more, put the book where your phone used to be. If you want to stop scrolling at night, charge the phone outside your bedroom. If you want to eat better, make the default food obvious and easy, and make the junk slightly harder to access. People underestimate how powerful slightly harder is. Humans are lazy in both directions. If you make the bad habit only a little inconvenient, you've already shifted the odds. If you want to work out, don't rely on motivation. Lay out the clothes. Put the shoes where you can't ignore them. Make the first step automatic. The environment isn't about forcing you to do the whole thing. It's about making the start effortless. If you want to do deep work, real work that moves your life forward, then your environment has to stop shouting at you. Your laptop must not be a casino. Your phone must not be the steering wheel of your attention. It's not just distraction, it's identity. Because what you repeatedly give your attention to, you start to worship in a quiet way. Now, this isn't about becoming a monk, it's about becoming a designer. Let's break your environment into 3 layers: your physical space, your digital space, and your social space. Most people only think about the physical one, like cleaning a desk. But in 2026, the digital environment might be the most powerful force in your life. It follows you everywhere. It whispers to you while you're alone. It can turn a focused mind into a restless one in seconds. So start with physical. Look around the space where you spend most of your time, not with judgment, with curiosity. Ask, what behaviors does this space encourage? A cluttered desk encourages avoidance. A messy kitchen encourages impulsive eating. A bedroom full of light and screens encourages shallow sleep. A living room that faces the TV like an altar encourages passive living. None of this makes you a bad person. It just means your space has been training you. So choose one micro upgrade that changes behavior, not aesthetics. Maybe it's clearing one surface so your brain can breathe. Maybe it's putting a water bottle where you can see it. Maybe it's setting up a single work corner that is only for work, so your mind begins to associate that space with focus. The goal is not beauty. The goal is cues. Now, digital. This is where most lives collapse quietly. Your phone is not just a device, it's an environment, one designed by teams of brilliant people whose job is to capture your attention and keep it. If your goals matter, you cannot treat your phone like a neutral object. It's not neutral. It's persuasive. It's always on. So you upgrade your digital environment by changing defaults. Turn off notifications that are not truly essential. Not later, now. Because every notification is a tiny theft of attention, and attention is the currency you pay to build your future. When you lose attention, you don't just lose time, you lose direction. Move distracting apps off your home screen, or better, delete them for a period. Not because you'll never use them again, but because you're reclaiming control. You're telling your mind, I decide what enters my awareness. And here's something that sounds small but changes everything. Make your home screen boring. Boring is a superpower. A boring screen doesn't seduce you. It doesn't trigger loops. It gives you space to choose. If you want to be even more serious, set specific access windows for the apps that steal the most from you. One window in the afternoon, one in the evening. And outside those windows, the apps are off limits. You're not trying to remove pleasure from life. You're trying to remove compulsion. Now social. This is the layer people avoid because it's emotionally complicated. But it matters, because the people around you are an environment. Their habits influence your habits. Their standards influence your standards. Their chaos can become your chaos. Their cynicism can become your inner voice. And this isn't about cutting everyone off. It's about recognizing influence. Ask yourself, who makes your goals feel normal? and who makes your goals feel like a joke. Some people will not support your growth, not because they hate you, but because your growth reminds them of what they're avoiding. Your discipline becomes a mirror they didn't ask for, and instead of looking at themselves, they try to pull you back down into comfort with them. So here's a clean rule for 2026. Protect your momentum. Momentum is fragile. It doesn't like drama. It doesn't like negativity. It doesn't like constant explanation. You need more time with people who respect your focus, even if they don't fully understand it. And you need less time in spaces where your mind becomes scattered and reactive. Now let me ask you a question that can change your year if you answer it honestly. What is one environment in your life, physical, digital, or social, that keeps pulling you back into your old self? Don't answer with a dramatic thing. Answer with the true thing, the small, daily thing, the one that quietly sabotages you, because that's where your power is. And now the practical instruction, the if-then that makes this real. If you keep failing the same goal, then don't blame your character first. Change the environment first. Remove one trigger. Add one cue. Make the next right action easier. Make the next wrong action harder. Here's a simple way to apply it today. Do a 1-hour environment reset. 1 hour only. Set a timer. In that hour, do 3 moves. 1 physical, 1 digital, 1 social. Physical, remove 1 friction point. Clear the desk. Prep the gym clothes. Put healthy food in plain sight. Digital, turn off 3 notifications and remove 1 distracting app from your home screen. Social, send 1 message or make 1 plan with someone who supports your growth, or gently decline 1 thing that drains your energy. That's it. Small, targeted, done. Because environment upgrades are not about intensity, they're about leverage. And the best part is, once your environment begins to support you, you start noticing something else. You stop needing perfect days. You start building progress on imperfect days, which leads directly into the next step, the one that saves people from quitting, breaking the all-or-nothing cycle. Step 5. Break the all-or-nothing cycle. Have you ever noticed how 1 small slip can feel like the end of the whole story? You miss 1 workout and your mind says, well, there goes the week. You eat 1 thing you didn't plan to eat, and suddenly the day feels ruined. So you keep eating because, in your head, it's already over. You wake up late, you scroll for too long, you procrastinate for an hour, and something inside you quietly decides, I blew it. And the strangest part is, that single moment doesn't just change what you do next. It changes who you believe you are in that moment. That's the all-or-nothing cycle. It's not a discipline problem, it's an identity problem. It's the mind turning 1 imperfect moment into a permanent label. And if you want to achieve your goals in 2026, this is one of the most important battles you'll fight. Not against the world, but against the way your own brain tries to interpret reality when things don't go perfectly. Because here's what's true. Perfection is not required for progress. But the belief that perfection is required will destroy progress. All-or-nothing thinking is emotional. It's the mind trying to avoid discomfort. It says, if I can't do this right, I'd rather not do it at all, because doing it imperfectly forces you to face something vulnerable. The fact that you're still learning, still building, still human. So step 5 is about building a different relationship with imperfection. Not by lowering your standards, but by raising your intelligence. Think about how people actually get strong in the gym or in life. They don't get strong by never failing. They get strong by failing safely, recovering quickly, and returning again. The muscle doesn't grow during the perfect rep. The muscle grows during the repair. And your character works the same way. You don't become reliable by never slipping. You become reliable by returning without drama. Most people don't quit because the goal is too hard. They quit because they make the mistake mean something about them. They turn "I missed today" into "I always fail." They turn "I messed up" into "I'm not that kind of person." They turn "I lost momentum" into "I don't have what it takes." That's not logic. That's a story. And stories are powerful because the mind will act in alignment with the story it believes. The Stoics understood this in their own language. They didn't have modern psychology terms, but they knew the mind adds interpretation to events. They knew the difference between what happens and what you tell yourself about what happens. And when you catch that difference, you gain freedom. Because you can't always control whether you stumble, but you can control whether you turn the stumble into an excuse to disappear. So let's get practical. The all-or-nothing cycle usually follows a pattern. It starts with an unrealistic rule. I have to do this perfectly. Then real life happens. You break the rule. Then comes shame. And shame is heavy. Shame makes you want relief. So you seek relief through avoidance, distraction, indulgence, quitting. And then, after you've quit for a while, you feel worse, which makes the next restart even harder. That's how people lose months, then years, while thinking they're only losing a day. Breaking the cycle starts with one mindset shift that sounds simple but changes everything. Aim for consistency, not purity. Purity says, no mistakes. Consistency says, I return. Purity is fragile. Consistency is resilient. Purity makes you hide from your own humanity. Consistency makes you use your humanity as data. And in 2026, you want to become a person who uses data. So when you slip, instead of asking, why am I like this? Ask a calmer question. What happened right before this? Because habits are not moral failures. They are patterns, and patterns can be adjusted. Maybe you ate badly because you slept badly. Maybe you scrolled because you felt lonely. Maybe you skipped the workout because the plan was too ambitious for a normal day. Maybe you procrastinated because you didn't know the first step. When you ask what happened right before, you stop being at war with yourself. You become a student of your own behavior. Now here's the part that really matters. You need a rule for what you do after a slip. Most people have rules for their perfect day. Very few people have rules for their imperfect day. And that's the year right there. Your 2026 will not be defined by your best days. It will be defined by what you do after the days that disappoint you. So we build a recovery protocol, not a motivational speech. A protocol, something you don't argue with. One simple protocol is the minimum viable win. When the day goes off track, you don't try to salvage it with intensity. You salvage it with a small act of integrity. You do the smallest version of the habit that keeps your identity alive. If your plan was a full workout, the minimum viable win might be 10 minutes of movement, a walk, a few push-ups, something that says, I still show up. If your plan was deep work for an hour, the minimum viable win might be 15 minutes with the phone away, a single paragraph, a single solved problem, a single honest start. If your plan was eating clean all day, the minimum viable win might be one clean meal next, not tomorrow, next. And you might think, that's too small. But small is not weak. Small is strategic. Small is how you keep the chain from breaking. Small is how you prevent one mistake from becoming a season. Let me ask you something that's uncomfortable but important. When you slip, do you try to punish yourself back into discipline? A lot of people do. They skip meals, they do extreme workouts, they make harsh rules. But punishment creates fear, and fear is not a stable foundation for growth. Fear might make you comply for a moment, but it doesn't make you trust yourself. And without trust, every goal becomes exhausting. You live like you're constantly trying to control a wild animal inside you. A better approach is firm kindness. Kindness without softness, firmness without hatred. That balance is rare, but it's what creates a person who can sustain a long project. So here's the central truth of step 5. Your job is not to be perfect. Your job is to recover quickly. Recovery speed is everything. If you can recover in hours instead of days, you win the year. If you can recover in 1 day instead of 1 week, you win the year. If you can recover without shame, you stop bleeding time. This is why the never miss twice idea is so powerful, but we can make it even more human, because sometimes life is legitimately messy. So instead of treating it like a rigid command, treat it like a compass. If you miss, your next mission is return. Not to punish, not to overcorrect, not to make up for it with pain, just to return. And now, the if-then instruction that breaks the cycle in real life. If you slip once, then immediately shrink the next action to a size you cannot refuse, and do it within the next 24 hours. That's it. That's the move. Not start over Monday. Not restart next month. Within 24 hours, do the smallest action that proves you're still in the game. Because the all-or-nothing cycle survives on delay. It survives on the idea that you need a perfect restart moment. But you don't. You need continuity. You need a thread. Even a thin thread. Especially a thin thread. There's also a subtle psychological trick here. Treat slips as expected, not as surprising. This doesn't mean you plan to fail. It means you plan to be human. When you expect imperfection, you stop panicking when it arrives. You stop turning it into an identity crisis. You say, this is part of the process. And then you execute your protocol. In a strange way, you become calmer, more adult, less dramatic. And that calmness is not just emotional, it's practical, because drama burns energy, shame burns energy, overcorrecting burns energy. But a simple recovery protocol preserves energy, and energy is what you need to build anything worthwhile. So in 2026, don't measure yourself by the number of times you fall off. Measure yourself by how quickly you return. That's what consistent people are really doing. They're not magically more motivated than you. They're not morally superior. They just don't let one bad moment rewrite the whole story. They keep the story intact. They keep the identity intact. They keep the chain alive. And once you break the all-or-nothing cycle, something interesting happens. You stop treating resistance like a monster. You start seeing it as a signal, a message, a conversation your nervous system is trying to have with you. And that takes us naturally to step 6, because if you can recover without shame, you can finally learn to use your emotions as fuel instead of letting them sabotage you. Step 6. Use emotional visualization. Have you ever tried to stay motivated by repeating logical reasons and still felt your body refuse to move? That moment is more common than people admit. You know what to do. You know why it matters. You've watched the videos, made the plans, even felt inspired for a while. And then the morning arrives, or the evening arrives, and your mind is saying, go. But your emotions are saying, not now. And what usually wins is not logic. What wins is the emotion you can feel in your chest. That's why emotional visualization matters, not the fake, flashy kind where you picture a mansion and pretend you can feel it already. I'm talking about something quieter and more honest, something that works even if your dream is small, even if you're tired, even if you're not naturally positive. Emotional visualization is about training your nervous system to associate action with meaning, not just effort. Because the truth is, your brain is not only a planning machine, it's a meaning machine. It asks one question all day long. Is this worth it? And when the answer feels uncertain, resistance shows up. Not as a logical argument, as a heaviness, as a delay, as a sudden craving for comfort. As that voice that says, just do it tomorrow. So step 6 is about learning to speak to yourself in the language your brain actually listens to: emotion, imagery, consequence, and identity. Here's the simplest way to understand it. Most people only visualize outcomes. They visualize the finish line, but the finish line is far away, and the brain is designed to prioritize what's immediate. The brain will happily trade a future reward for a present relief. That's not weakness. That's biology. So you need to visualize 2 things, not 1. You visualize the future you want, yes, but you also visualize the future you get if you don't change. You visualize the cost, you visualize the drift, you visualize what staying the same actually looks like once it compounds. Because the human mind is strange. It can ignore danger when it's vague, but it responds when it's vivid. Let's make it real. Close your eyes for a moment, just as an experiment, and imagine it's November 2026. Not a fantasy scene, a normal day. You wake up, you reach for your phone, and you feel that familiar weight. Not despair, just disappointment that's become normal. You look back at the year and realize it moved the way years move when you don't lead them, quickly, quietly, without giving you what you hoped it would. You still have the same unfinished goals sitting in the back of your mind like unpaid debt. And you tell yourself the same sentence you've told yourself before: I don't know where my time went. That's one possible future. And the reason to look at it isn't to scare yourself, it's to wake yourself up. Because avoidance thrives in fog. Clarity kills it. Now imagine the other version of November 2026. Again, keep it normal, not perfection, just progress. You wake up and your body feels different, not because life is easier, but because you've kept promises. You trust yourself more. You're not constantly negotiating. Your mind is quieter because it has evidence. You've built something, maybe a stronger body, maybe a calmer routine, maybe a skill, maybe savings, maybe a business, maybe just a sense of personal dignity that you haven't felt in a long time. And in that quiet moment, you feel something rare: self-respect. Notice the difference between those 2 scenes. One is drift, the other is direction, and your daily choices decide which one becomes real. This is emotional visualization at its core. You make the future emotionally present, so the present becomes easier to navigate. But there's another layer most people miss, and it's the most useful one. You don't just visualize the end, you visualize the moment of resistance itself. Because the real battle isn't in December. The battle is tonight. The battle is when you don't feel like it. The battle is when nobody is clapping. The battle is when the couch looks warm and the work looks heavy. So you rehearse that moment in your mind. You picture yourself reaching the point where you usually quit, and you picture yourself doing the next right thing anyway. This is not cheesy. This is training. Athletes do this. Surgeons do this. Pilots do this. They mentally rehearse the hard parts so their nervous system doesn't panic when reality arrives. And you can do the same with your habits. So here's a simple practice. Choose one habit you're trying to build in 2026 and identify the exact moment you typically break. Not "I lack discipline," but the moment, the scene. Maybe it's 7:30 a.m. You feel groggy and the bed feels like gravity. Maybe it's 9:40 p.m. You're bored and your hand reaches for the phone. Maybe it's the moment you open your laptop and feel overwhelmed, and you suddenly want to clean the house instead of do the work. Now, visualize that scene, feel it. And then, in the visualization, do one small action that breaks the pattern. Not a heroic action, a realistic one. If it's the gym, visualize yourself putting on your shoes, just shoes. If it's work, visualize yourself opening the document and writing one sentence. If it's eating, visualize yourself drinking water and making the next meal simple instead of dramatic. And here's the key. In the visualization, attach an emotion to the action, not hype, meaning. Picture the quiet pride you feel when you keep a promise. Picture the relief you feel when you don't have to carry regret into tomorrow. Picture the calm confidence of being someone who follows through. Because when you attach emotion to the action, you're teaching your brain, this effort is worth it. Let me ask you a question in the middle of this, and answer it honestly, even if you don't like the answer. When you imagine your future, do you mostly imagine the reward, or do you also imagine the regret? A lot of people avoid imagining regret because it feels uncomfortable. But regret is not your enemy. Regret is information. Regret is your future self trying to communicate with you before it's too late. When you visualize regret clearly, you don't become anxious, you become precise. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. Now, there's a gentle warning here. Emotional visualization is powerful, but it has to stay grounded. If you visualize only the perfect outcome, you can end up feeling discouraged when reality looks messy. So visualize the messy version too. Visualize yourself being imperfect and still continuing. Visualize yourself having a bad day and still doing the minimum. That's the version that builds resilience. And this connects beautifully to what we talked about in step 5. The goal isn't to be flawless. The goal is to be the kind of person who returns. So visualize returning. Now, make it practical with one simple daily ritual that takes less than 2 minutes. In the morning, before the phone steals your mind, you run a quick mental film. You see one moment of temptation you're likely to face today. You see yourself meeting it with your chosen word from step 2. Steady, simple, integrity, boundaries, whatever your word is. And then you see yourself doing the smallest action that proves that word is real. Then you move. That's it. 2 minutes. And it changes the day because you've already met the hard moment once in your mind. So when it happens in real life, it feels familiar, less dramatic, less powerful. Here's the if-then instruction for step 6, the one that makes this usable. If you feel resistance rising, if you feel that heaviness, that urge to delay, then pause for 10 seconds and visualize 2 scenes, the cost of quitting today and the quiet pride of doing the smallest version of the plan. Then immediately do the first physical step, not the whole plan, the first step. Because emotion follows motion. When you move, the mind stops arguing. When you stay still, the argument grows. And over time, something shifts. Your goals stop being an abstract dream you talk about. They become a lived relationship with your future self. A relationship built on small moments of honesty. Small moments of courage. Small moments where you didn't need to feel ready. You just needed to be true. That's the kind of progress that changes a year. Not loud, not perfect, but real. Step 7. Work with resistance, not against it. Have you ever sat there fully aware of what you should do and felt an invisible wall inside you? Not a dramatic wall, just that heavy, I don't want to. That quiet delay, that fog that makes the simplest task feel strangely hard. And the worst part is how personal it feels, like it's a